Welcome to Fight News Now Extra. My name is John Pollock, and we are going to round out the week with a bunch of stories, including the latest on Gina Carano, Dana White banned Silva from another platform, and we chat with Patrick Cote ahead of his UFC 178 bout. Saturday's UFC 178 card is one of the best cards of the year, and one of the prelim fights many are anticipating is the welterweight bout between Patrick Cote and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Cote has spent part of his camp in Thailand at Tiger Muay Thai and is looking for his third victory at 170 pounds since cutting down last year. And Cote joined me on the MMA Report to discuss the fight with Thompson.
He's very unique, and but we did what he had to do. Our goal is to go there and fight our fight, push the pace a lot, and back him up. And you know, we know exactly what we have to do against him. He's very flashy. He's accurate. He's fast, and we have to take control of the pace of this fight and fight our fight.
The relationship between the UFC and Wanderlei Silva looks to be damaged for the time being. Silva has lashed out at the promotion, including UFC President Dana White, and tells PVT out of Brazil that the promoter thinks he owns the sport, and brought up the recent incident where White removed a judge during the Macau card on August 23rd and asked how we can be sure he isn't controlling results of fights. White was asked this week prior to UFC 178 about the Hall of Fame and said that Silva has been Pete Rosed and will never be inducted. And it appears a Gina Carano debut in the UFC isn't in the cards in the near future. Dave Meltzer at MMAfighting.com reported on Thursday that Carano will be filming 2 movies before the end of 2014 and therefore no chance of her fighting January 3rd against Ronda Rousey. White told members of the media that Carano is the hardest human being they have ever dealt with, and citing the issues with her management in trying to work out a deal. And I'm here, as I am every single day, with John Ramsden and Robin Black, getting set for UFC 178 coming up this weekend. And this week, Dana White, man, Gina Carano, can't stand her. Wanderlei Silva, can't stand him. No chance of going into the UFC Hall of Fame. Hasn't been a great week for Dana White. Is this a just ruling by Dana White?
Of course not. This makes absolutely no sense. Wanderlei Silva is going to go down as one of the greatest competitors of all time. He was a champion for the now Zuffa-owned Pride Fighting Championships. It really makes no sense, especially when you look at the fact that, you know, for years there was the talk of, you know, Chuck Liddell versus Wanderlei Silva, the 205-pound champion from the UFC versus the 205-pound champion from Pride. What would happen if these guys met? Eventually, these guys met, and there's no way this fight could ever live up to the hype. Wanderlei Silva, Chuck Liddell will go down as one of the greatest fights of all time, you know, bridging that gap, and you're seeing all the Pride guys make that move to the UFC, and I think Wanderlei Silva's contributions to mixed martial arts are undeniable.
We also look at, you know, the Hall of Fame, and, you know, the UFC's version, I look at it much closer. It's a friends and family kind of thing, and Wanderlei Silva is not a friend nor family to them anymore, and that's what it is. I don't put a ton of stock in the UFC Hall of Fame.
But the casual fans do. They do, and that's the problem. It's like if Dana White in the UFC wants to obliterate Frank Shamrock from the history books, they can do that. And you ask casual fans about Frank Shamrock, they're like, you mean Ken Shamrock, right? They have no idea that this guy, how good he was, about his contributions to mixed martial arts, and that's an unfortunate thing.
But then, I mean, at the end of the day, though, they're not this not-for-profit charitable organization.
Agreed.
They're a business, and Wanderlei Silva is someone that cost them business this past year, missed a lot of fights, hasn't been the most active guy, and now he's going out on this note, and I think all of us at this table believe that Wanderlei Silva will fight again, whether it's in the mountains of Dubai, whether it's in Japan, whether it's in the North Pole for a Christmas Eve spectacular. I think we will see Wanderlei Silva again in probably a non-commissioned geographical state.
He's going to kick Santa's ass.
That's right. Wanderlei Silva, 1FC, soccer kicks and stomps. Like, come on, give me a break.
You could have a ho-ho hoist Gracie come down to horrible. Let's move on over to UFC 178 because this is the card that has got so much focus on it right now. And very interesting, this picture a fan put up online on Twitter on the Las Vegas highway where they have a poster for 178, and on one side we have Eddie Alvarez and Donald Cerrone. On the other side, Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor. And I can't fault the UFC that these are the two key fights that I think a lot of people are buying this show for. I think Demetrius Johnson is simply a byproduct of that price tag for the pay-per-view and not the focus. I think you could make the argument the least interesting fight on that main card is the title fight.
That's true, but you look at the fact that Donald Cerrone, people just love watching Donald Cerrone fight. I think if you ask the casual fans, tell me what Donald Cerrone's record is over his last 5 or 6 fights. It's like, oh, I don't know. Did he win? I know he was in crazy fights. Did he win all of them? It's irrelevant because every time Donald Cerrone steps inside of the cage, you are getting your money's worth. This guy puts on a spectacular show. He can take the pain, and we're going to see the same thing with Eddie Alvarez. And again, it's for all the hardcore fans that have followed Bellator. It's like, oh, we knew that Eddie Alvarez would be successful when he got into the UFC. The problem is the 125-pounders, the casual fans, still haven't got behind those guys. I think Mighty Mouse Johnson is going to put on a show this weekend and try to change everybody's mind, and I believe he's going to get a performer of the night.
Yeah, I think I love watching this guy fight. I absolutely do. It's like magic. And spend the time and get to know what a guy like that does. If these two fights serve in getting people to watch this card, then they watch it, they get their minds blown, and then they see how special this guy is. Win all across the board for everybody.
We will find out. It's certainly a spectacular main card and an undercard as well. We heard from Patrick Cote taking on Stephen Thompson. I think a really interesting fight there at 170 pounds. You can look up and down this card. Some great stuff coming up. For Robin Black, John Ramdine, I'm John Pollock. UFC 178 is coming up this Saturday night, and Fight News Now Extra is next.